"Mommy hasn't eaten. Can you share expired bread?" the boy asked, while Single Dad CEO walked into the bakery. The night of December 23rd settled cold and unforgiving over the small town, snow twisting through the air in thick, wind-driven sheets. Streetlights glowed faintly behind the blur, stretching pale beams across the frozen sidewalks. At the end of the street, a small bakery shone with soft warmth, its windows fogged, its shelves partly emptied after a long day. Inside, the last customer stepped out as a tired employee flipped the sign to "Closing soon." Just outside that fragile circle of warmth, tucked against the side wall, sat a woman and her child. Lila Dawson leaned against the brick, her pale fingers trembling where they clutched her thin coat. Her long, light blonde hair was tangled from the cold. Her face, usually gentle, had gone gray from hunger. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, saving every scrap for her son. Her breaths grew shorter, weaker, as though each one cost her something she no longer had. Beside her, 4-year-old Milo sat huddled close, trying to make himself small against the wind. His coat was thin and offered little protection. Snow dusted his lashes, but he refused to cry. Instead, he smiled faintly at his mother, as if pretending made things better. He reached out and touched her cheek. "Mommy, you feel cold. Are you okay?" Lila forced a smile, though her lips were nearly white. "Mommy is fine, baby. I'm not hungry." But Milo didn't look convinced. He watched her carefully, the way only a child who had grown up too fast would. He pulled off his worn scarf and wrapped it around her neck with clumsy determination. "You can have mine. I'm warm enough." She turned away to hide the tears that slipped down her face. She didn't want him to see fear, or exhaustion, or how close she was to fading. Then her head slowly dropped against the wall, her eyes fluttering shut. "Mommy?" Milo whispered. "Mommy, wake up. Please wake up." He shook her shoulder, desperate, but she didn't stir. Snow continued to fall, soft and indifferent. Milo looked toward the bakery window glowing a few feet away. Warmth, food, safety, something he hadn't known in so long. He wiped his eyes fiercely. "I'll be right back," he whispered, kissing her cold hand. "I'll find you something. I promise." He pushed himself to his feet. His small boots slipped in the snow, and he caught himself on the wall. The wind stung his cheeks as he fought his way to the bakery door. The bell chirped as he pushed it open, letting in a swirl of freezing air. A cashier looked up, startled to see a thin, snow-soaked child standing just inside the doorway, clutching himself for warmth. His hat hung crookedly, and his little arms shook. Milo stepped forward, voice small but steady. "Excuse me, do you have any expired bread? Mommy hasn't eaten. She's really tired. She hasn't eaten in 2 days." The employee blinked, stunned, speechless. Milo lowered his gaze. "It's okay if it's old. Or thrown away. Mommy just needs something. Please." Before the cashier could find words, the bell chimed again. A tall man entered, carrying a little girl on his hip. Snow scattered from his dark coat as he stepped inside. Adrian West paused immediately, his attention caught by the trembling voice of the boy in front of him. He listened, every word slicing through him. His chest tightened. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. But Milo wasn't looking at him. The boy stared past the display case, toward the window, where a figure lay slumped in the snow. Adrian followed the child's gaze. When he saw Lila's still form, his entire body went cold. The image mirrored the moment his wife collapsed 2 years earlier, exhausted, freezing, slipping away faster than he could reach her, a memory he had never escaped. Ellie tugged his coat. "Daddy." The boy looked scared. Adrian's grip on her tightened gently. He turned to the cashier, voice firm but calm. "Give him the freshest loaf you have, and hot cocoa, for both." The employee hurried to obey. Then Adrian crouched, placing a steady hand on Milo's shaking shoulder. His tone softened. "Can you show me where your mommy is?" Milo's eyes filled, but he nodded. A single tear slid down his cold cheek as he reached for Adrian's hand. And together, with Ellie watching quietly from her father's arms, they stepped back out into the night, toward the woman who meant the world to the little boy who had walked into the bakery asking for expired bread. The cold hit Adrian the moment he stepped outside with Milo. Snow continued to fall heavily, softening the world into a blur of white and silence. Just a few feet from the bakery door, Lila sat slumped against the wall, her body barely upright, her head tilted to one side, eyes half closed, lips dry and pale. Adrian's heart dropped. Still holding Milo, he crouched beside her. Lila stirred weakly, her lashes fluttering. She lifted her head just enough to see a tall man holding her son. Her heart skipped in panic, but her body was too weak to react. Adrian placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. His voice was quiet, calm. "It's okay. I'm here to help. Let's get you warm." Lila tried to speak, but the words came out as a breath. Her eyes glistened, foggy with cold and confusion. Adrian shifted Milo to one arm and reached out his other to support Lila. She winced at the contact, maybe from the cold, maybe from the shock, but she didn't resist. The bakery employee had already rushed out with a blanket in hand. Adrian nodded gratefully as they wrapped it around her trembling shoulders. Then, from behind Adrian, a tiny voice broke the heavy moment. Ellie stepped forward, her cheeks pink with cold, holding out a half-eaten cookie shaped like a snowflake. "You can have mine," she said, looking up at Lila. "Mommy says sharing is love." For a second, Lila simply stared at the little girl. This delicate, brave gesture from a stranger's child undoing something inside her. Tears welled up in her eyes. She pressed a hand to her mouth and nodded, unable to speak. Together, they guided her inside. The bakery felt like a different world. Warmth from the ovens radiated through the space, and the scent of fresh bread, cinnamon, and butter wrapped around them like a soft blanket. One employee cleared off a small table near the window, laying down a clean cloth and bringing out food with quiet urgency. 2 steaming bowls of chicken soup, warm rolls straight from the oven, and 2 cups of hot cocoa with marshmallows bobbing on top. Adrian helped Lila into the chair while Milo climbed into the seat beside her. Without hesitation, he picked up a spoon and gently scooped some soup, holding it up to his mother. "Eat too, Mommy," he said. "I don't want you to fall asleep forever." Lila took the spoon with shaking hands. She looked down at her son, then at the food in front of her, simple, comforting, and more than she dared to hope for in days. Adrian sat across from them, Ellie nestled quietly on his lap. His eyes didn't leave the small family in front of him. There was something about the way Milo took care of his mother that stirred a memory deep inside him. The way he spoke with such grown-up worry. It reminded Adrian of how Ellie had looked at him the night Elise died, too young to understand, but already bearing too much. He leaned forward slightly, his voice gentle. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" Lila looked up, startled. Her instinct was to protect her pride, even now. "I can find somewhere," she said quietly. "We don't want to trouble you." Adrian nodded slowly. He didn't press her. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a sleek black business card and slid it across the table toward her. "Call this number if you need anything," he said, his tone sincere. "Really, anything." Lila glanced at the card, then back at him. Her fingers hesitated before picking it up. For the first time in days, the trembling in her hands eased, just a little. She tucked the card into her coat pocket. Across the table, Milo had finished his roll and was sipping cocoa with both hands, a content smile forming at the corners of his mouth. And Adrian, watching them, felt something loosen inside his chest, something he hadn't even known was clenched. The warmth of the bakery glowed brighter now, not just from the ovens or the candles, but from something softer, something human. 2 worlds had crossed paths tonight, and neither of them would leave the same. The bakery was closing for the night. The last of the chairs were stacked, the lights dimmed to a gentle glow. Outside, the snow hadn't stopped falling, blanketing the streets in silence. Inside, the world was still warm. Lila sat at the same table, Milo curled up beside her, his belly full for the first time in days. A wool blanket now draped over his tiny shoulders, his head resting on her lap. His breathing was deep and even, peaceful. Across from her, Adrian sat with Ellie nestled against his chest. Her little hands clutched the front of his coat, sound asleep, her curls falling over her cheek. Adrian absent-mindedly brushed them aside. Lila's voice broke the quiet. "Thank you. For what you did today. You didn't have to." Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. Adrian looked up, meeting her eyes. He shook his head slowly. "I did," he said simply, "because someone once helped me when I was at my worst." He leaned back, eyes distant for a moment, like he was pulling a memory from somewhere deep, somewhere it hurt to touch. Lila waited, sensing he wasn't done. "My wife," he said, "Elise. She passed away 2 years ago. It was sudden. Complications after giving birth. She was already exhausted, pushing through everything. And he stopped, jaw tightening. Then exhaled. "I was busy growing the company, traveling. I thought I was doing it for our future, but I forgot to hold on to the present." Lila's lips parted, but she said nothing, just listened. Adrian's eyes dropped to Ellie in his arms. "She called me the night before, said she was tired. I thought she meant mentally. I told her to rest, and I'd be home soon." The next morning, she was gone. The weight of his words hung in the air. Lila placed a hand on the table, fingers trembling just slightly. "I thought I was the only one who felt that kind of regret," she whispered. "I used to be a preschool music teacher. I loved it. But then, the school downsized. The rent went up. Milo got sick. I fell behind, one bill after another, and before I knew it, we were living out of a car." She swallowed hard, forcing down tears. "I kept thinking, if I'd just worked harder, been smarter, maybe I wouldn't have failed him." Adrian looked at her, not with pity, but recognition. "You didn't fail him," he said. "He's fed, he's loved. That's more than some kids ever get." A small sound stirred beside them. Milo had sat up, eyes still heavy with sleep, and looked over at Ellie. He scooted closer, gently brushing her hair with his fingers. "She's like a little star," he said matter-of-factly. "Can we be her friends?" Lila's breath caught in her chest. Adrian's lips tugged into a smile, soft and real. It was the first time in a long while that the corners of his eyes crinkled with it. "I think she'd like that," Adrian said. The warmth returned to the space, stronger this time, not from the ovens, not from the lights, but from something deeper, human, real. Adrian reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. He typed quickly, then brought it to his ear. "Derek," he said, his voice low, "can you book a room at the Crescent Hotel?" "Yes, tonight. 2 beds. No rush on check-in. Just make sure it's ready. Charge it to my account." He ended the call, slipping the phone back into his coat. Then looked at Lila. "I've arranged a room for you two tonight. Just across the square. Warm. Safe." Lila immediately shook her head. I can't accept that." "You can," Adrian said. His tone was calm, kind, but firm. "It's not charity. It's what people do when they see someone falling. They help them up." She looked down, lips pressed together, tears threatening again. But she nodded. Not out of weakness, out of grace. Milo yawned beside her and leaned into her side. Adrian stood, shifting Ellie carefully to his shoulder. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you to your room." And as they stepped out into the snow once again, this time together, the wind seemed just a little softer, the night a little less cold. The room smelled like clean linens and faint cocoa. Warmth poured in from the heater, wrapping around Lila like a memory she had long forgotten. She stood motionless at the door for a moment, still holding Milo's tiny hand. Across from them were 2 twin beds, made perfectly, pillows fluffed, and clean towels stacked neatly on the dresser. Milo's eyes lit up instantly. He broke free from her grasp and ran toward the nearest bed, leaping onto it like it was a cloud. "Mommy," he shouted, bouncing once. "It's soft, so soft." His laughter echoed in the room, a sound Lila hadn't heard in weeks, maybe longer. She didn't move right away. Her fingers brushed over the doorframe as if she had to remind herself that this was real, that they were not outside in the cold anymore. Slowly, she stepped inside. The carpet under her shoes felt like luxury. Her eyes roamed the room, the curtains drawn shut against the snowy night, the steam rising from 2 cups of cocoa left on the nightstand, the tiny chocolate placed neatly on each folded towel. It was nothing grand, but to her, it was everything. She reached the nearest bed, ran her hand over the blanket, and touched the pillow gently. Her fingers trembled. Then, without warning, she dropped to her knees beside the bed. She didn't cry. Yet, she just knelt there in silence, eyes closed, lips moving in a whisper. "Thank you, whoever you are up there. Thank you." Milo crawled across the bed and leaned over the edge to peer down at her. "Mommy?" he said gently. Lila looked up and smiled, tears in her eyes. "I'm okay," she whispered. He patted the space next to him. "Come, lie down." She got up slowly, kicking off her shoes, and lay beside him. He pulled the blanket over them both with his little arms and tucked it under her shoulder. "Tonight you sleep, Mommy," he said, snuggling close. "No skipping dinner, no skipping dreams." Lila's chest tightened. The tears came now, soft, quiet. Not from pain or despair this time, but from something far more powerful: release. She turned and kissed the top of Milo's head. "I love you," she whispered. Milo was already half asleep, but she heard his soft reply, "I love you more." She watched him drift off. His chest rose and fell with peace she hadn't seen on his face in too long. She touched his hair gently, then closed her eyes beside him. For the first time in months, she didn't fall asleep afraid. Across town, in a different room at a more upscale hotel, Adrian sat beside a large window, Ellie asleep in his arms. She had knocked out the moment he laid her down, her body warm and relaxed against him. Outside, snowflakes drifted down in slow spirals. The city lights glimmered beneath the blanket of white. Adrian stared out in silence for a long while. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. He unlocked it and scrolled to a photo, one he hadn't opened in months. It was of Elise, holding baby Ellie, sunlight hitting her hair just right. She was laughing. His thumb hovered over the screen as if he could touch the memory. He exhaled slowly. "I think," he whispered into the quiet, "maybe we're not the only ones hurting in this world." He looked down at Ellie, tucked safely against his chest, her tiny hand clutching his shirt. He held her tighter, and for the first time in 2 Christmases, the ache in his chest didn't feel so sharp. Morning sunlight filtered through the frosted hotel window, casting a golden glow across the modest room. Lila stirred awake to the soft knock at the door. She slipped out of bed carefully so as not to wake Milo, who was still curled up beneath the thick hotel blanket. Her feet touched the warm carpet, still a luxury she had not gotten used to. When she opened the door, Adrian stood there with 2 paper bags and Ellie bundled up in a puffy pink coat. "Good morning," he said with a soft smile. "We brought breakfast." Before Lila could respond, Ellie wriggled free from her father's arms and darted past her into the room. "Milo," she chirped, running up to the bed. "Come see the Christmas tree with us. Daddy says you can come." Milo sat up groggily, eyes still half closed. But when he saw Ellie, he grinned. "Tree?" he asked. "Big one," Ellie said, holding her arms wide. "With sparkly lights." Milo looked at Lila hopefully. She hesitated. Her first instinct was to decline. This wasn't her world. Whatever kindness Adrian had shown, it couldn't last. But then she looked at her son, eyes shining, cheeks flushed with excitement. She couldn't say no to that face. Adrian's house stood tall on a quiet street lined with snow-covered trees. The inside, though elegant, felt oddly untouched, like a place waiting to be filled with life again. The Christmas tree in the living room reached almost to the ceiling. Lights twinkled in soft whites and golds, handmade ornaments, clearly created by Ellie, hung in imperfect rows. "It's huge," Milo whispered in awe. Leela removed her coat slowly, still unsure where to stand or what to do. Adrian noticed. He handed her a warm cup of tea. "You can stay for Christmas Eve dinner," he said gently. "No strings, just company." She looked at him, eyes searching his face. There was no pity there, no pressure, just kindness. She nodded, unsure how to respond. The tea warmed her fingers, and something deeper inside. In the kitchen, Ellie and Milo stood on stools, helping Adrian and Lila decorate gingerbread cookies. Flour dusted the counter. A bowl of icing had tipped, and somehow Milo had icing in his hair. Ellie had managed to get red sprinkles on her nose. Lila laughed. An actual, full laugh. Adrian looked over from where he was wiping off a spoon, surprised and quietly stunned. "You have a beautiful smile, you know," he said softly. Lila paused, blinking at him. No one had said that to her in a long, long time. She looked away, suddenly shy. "I haven't had much to smile about. Maybe today changes that," he replied. Later that afternoon, as the sky outside turned a gentle gray, they all gathered in the living room near the fire. Ellie curled up next to Milo on the rug, the two of them giggling over a shared candy cane. Adrian poured cocoa for everyone, and handed Lila her mug with a quiet smile. She sat beside him on the couch, unsure if she belonged there, but unable to deny that it felt safe. She glanced at the two children, curled together, small and content. Her heart swelled with something unfamiliar. Not quite love, not yet, but something warm, something hopeful. She turned to Adrian, caught him already looking at her. There was silence. But it wasn't uncomfortable, just peaceful. For the first time in months, Lila wasn't thinking about survival. She wasn't worrying about the next meal or where they'd sleep. For one brief evening, she let herself exist, not as a struggling mother, not as a burden, but as a woman who was being seen. The fire crackled. Outside, snow began to fall again, gently this time. Inside, laughter danced between the walls. A family? No, not yet, but maybe. The beginning of one. The dining room glowed with soft light, the flicker of red candles casting gentle shadows across the table. A roasted chicken sat in the center, surrounded by mashed potatoes, warm rolls, and a bowl of cranberry sauce. The tablecloth was white lace, slightly wrinkled, but perfectly charming. Adrian adjusted a place setting as footsteps echoed from the hallway. Lila stepped into the room, wearing the deep wine-colored knit dress he had quietly arranged to be delivered. Her golden blonde hair had been brushed out, resting gently on her shoulders. Milo gasped softly, eyes wide. "You look like Christmas, Mommy." Adrian turned toward her, his expression softening. He wasn't looking at her like someone to be helped. He was simply seeing her. They sat down together, the children beside them, Ellie already nibbling on a dinner roll. For a while, the conversation was light, about cookies, snowflakes, and Milo's favorite ornaments. Then, as the plates began to empty and the warmth of the food settled in, Adrian's voice dropped. "She was a doctor," he said quietly. "My wife, Elise. She gave everything she had to her patients." Lila looked up, her fork frozen mid-air. "One winter," Adrian continued, "she caught something going around the hospital, kept working, ignored the fever. She called me once, said she was tired." His voice cracked. "I thought she meant emotionally, that she just needed rest. But she was dying." The room fell still. Milo reached for Ellie's hand under the table. Lila placed her fork down gently, her hands trembling. "I used to be a music teacher," she whispered. "Then the school downsized. The rent went up. I couldn't keep up. We lost the apartment. I tried to hold everything together for Milo, but sometimes I wonder if I failed him." Adrian didn't offer empty reassurance. He simply reached across the table, laid his hand over hers, and said, "You did not lose your worth." A moment passed. Then, a buzz broke the silence. Adrian's phone lit up beside him. He looked at it, eyes tightening slightly. "Excuse me," he said, standing and walking a few steps away. Lila didn't mean to listen, but his voice wasn't far. Low, tense. "Yes, the apartment on the west side," Adrian said. "Move up the papers. I want it ready by Monday." Lila's chest tightened. Her gaze dropped. An apartment? So it was all temporary. A gesture. He was getting things ready to send them away. She barely touched her dessert. After dinner, as Adrian walked back in to help clear the dishes, she was already stacking plates. "You don't have to help," he said. She kept her eyes on the plates. "You've done enough. We won't stay long, I promise." Adrian blinked. "What do you mean?" Lila turned to him, voice quiet but firm. "You don't have to fix us, Adrian. We're not your charity case." Silence filled the room. But Adrian didn't argue. He didn't defend. He walked over to the table, picked up a folded napkin, and revealed a small notebook wrapped in ribbon. On the cover, embossed gently in gold foil, was a tiny treble clef. Inside the first page, in his neat handwriting, read, "For your music to return one day. I wasn't trying to fix you," he said. "I was buying an apartment because I thought, maybe one day you'd want to choose where you live, not be told." Lila stared at the notebook. Her lips parted, but no words came. She clutched it to her chest, eyes glistening. No more was said. That night, when the house had quieted, she found the old upright piano in the corner of the living room. She sat down, the bench creaking softly under her. Her fingers hesitated, then pressed down. A gentle melody filled the room, imperfect, unsure, but alive. Milo and Ellie padded in quietly and sat on the floor beside her, listening, sleepy eyes wide. From the hallway, Adrian watched silently, one hand resting on the doorframe, the other still clutching the napkin the notebook had been wrapped in. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. Because sometimes, music says what words cannot. Shafts of golden sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting a soft glow over the snow-covered lawn outside. Inside the warm house, the scent of pine and cinnamon lingered in the air. The Christmas tree sparkled with ornaments and handmade paper snowflakes. Lila sat at the piano in the living room, fingers dancing quietly across the keys. The tune was hesitant at first, then grew more certain, fuller. It was a melody she had once written years ago but never finished, until now. Each note felt like stitching a part of herself back together. She did not notice Adrian descending the stairs until he stood silently behind her. His gaze softened at the sound of the music. When Lila finally glanced over her shoulder and caught sight of him, she stopped, startled. "Sorry," she said, a little breathless. "I thought everyone was asleep." "Please, don't stop," Adrian replied, his voice low and warm. It sounded like coming home. Before she could answer, the soft thump of tiny feet echoed down the stairs. Milo and Ellie came bounding into the room, both wearing matching reindeer pajamas. Milo's antlers were slightly crooked, and Ellie's nose had a red sticker on it. The sight made Lila smile without realizing it. "Daddy," Ellie called, holding up a folded piece of red construction paper. "We made something." Adrian knelt down as Ellie placed the card in his hands. It was a hand-drawn Christmas card, messy, colorful, and completely heartfelt. 4 stick figures stood under a tall tree. One had a yellow scribble for hair. Another had a bow. 2 small ones held hands. Beneath it, in big, uneven letters, Milo had written, "Our family. Mommy, me, Ellie, and Mr. A." Lila's hand flew to her mouth, eyes misting. Adrian looked at the card for a long time. Then he turned to Ellie, his voice soft. "You think we're a family now?" Ellie nodded firmly. "We share cookies. That's what families do." Adrian chuckled, tousling her hair. Milo grinned proudly. Lila wiped a tear from her cheek, heart aching in the best way. That evening, after the children had been tucked into bed and the last embers in the fireplace glowed faintly, Lila and Adrian sat side by side on the couch, wrapped in a silence that felt comforting rather than awkward. Lila stared into the fire. "I've spent so long surviving," she whispered. "I forgot what it feels like to be safe." Adrian turned to her, his eyes shadowed. "And I've spent so long chasing safety, I forgot how to live." They sat quietly for a few seconds, the fire cracking gently. Then Lila asked, her voice barely audible, "What are you afraid of, Adrian?" He looked down at his hands. "Of giving my heart again, and failing, of not being enough." She reached out and touched his hand gently. "Then maybe we just try, slowly." Adrian looked up. Their eyes met. He didn't say anything, but he nodded. Not a promise, not a vow, just an agreement to begin. He stood, walked to a nearby cabinet, and pulled open a small drawer. From it, he retrieved a delicate music box, worn, polished with time. He held it for a moment in his palm before carrying it back to her. "She would have liked you," he said, placing it gently in her hands. "You're strong, like she was." Lila traced her fingers over the etched lid. She clutched it to her chest, feeling the weight of grief, love, and something new, something tender, settling into her soul, not as a replacement, but as a blessing. A week had passed since Christmas, and the snow still drifted quietly outside, blanketing the world in white. But the silence no longer felt lonely. Inside Adrian's home, laughter echoed faintly down the hall. The house, once too big and too quiet, now held warmth in every room. Lila sat at the piano, her fingers gliding effortlessly over the keys. A simple melody filled the living room, hopeful, familiar, hers. Across the room, Adrian worked at his desk, but his eyes often wandered to her. She smiled once when she caught him watching. He didn't look away. Milo and Ellie ran past, giggling as they chased a ribbon through the hallway. Their laughter was the soundtrack of a new life beginning. That night, after the children were asleep, Lila sat alone in the guest room. A single lamp lit the corner where she held a letter, an official job offer from a prestigious music school in another city. It promised security, a salary, stability, everything she had once prayed for, but it would mean leaving, starting over. She turned the envelope in her hands and finally whispered, "If I took this job, it would mean moving away, starting over again." Adrian stood in the doorway. He didn't interrupt her thoughts. When she finally looked up, he said, "If that's what your heart tells you, I'll support it. But I won't lie, I don't want you to go." They stood there, suspended in a moment neither wanted to break. The next morning, the scent of fresh coffee and warm muffins greeted Lila when she walked into the kitchen. On the table sat a small wooden box. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a ring of keys and a folded note that simply read, "To our home, if you choose it." She turned, and Adrian stepped out from the kitchen, a mug in hand. "It's not a proposal," he said gently. "Not yet, just a promise that you'll always have a place here, if this is what you want too." Lila didn't answer with words. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. That was enough. A few days later, the living room was filled with neighbors and children from the town. Lila had organized a small Christmas recital, a gift to the community, and maybe to herself. Milo and Ellie, dressed in tiny vests and red dresses, greeted guests and passed around cookies. Adrian sat at the back, his heart full. Lila played with her students, pausing between songs to share bits of her story, how music had once been her voice, and how she had almost lost it to silence, how she found it again, not in a concert hall, but here, in a house that had become a home. Applause filled the room, but Adrian's eyes glistened for a different reason. After the guests left, the four of them stood in front of the Christmas tree. Milo held up a little chalkboard sign that read, "First Family Christmas, 2025. Lila took Adrian's hand. Her eyes shone with certainty. "I didn't choose the job," she whispered. "I chose this." Adrian smiled, a single tear slipping down his cheek. "You chose us." The camera pulled back slowly, showing the snow-covered roof, the golden light glowing through the windows, and the laughter of a family that never planned to be, but somehow found their way to each other. And then, the final words appeared on screen. Home is not where you were born, it's where someone waits for you. If this story touched your heart, just like Milo's courage and Lila's quiet strength touched Adrian's life, don't forget to show your love. At Soul Stirring Stories, we bring you tales that heal, inspire, and remind us what truly matters: family, kindness, and the power of second chances. Hit subscribe to never miss a story that moves you. And don't forget to smash that hype button to help us keep creating emotional journeys like this one. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes home is not a place, but a person.
Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Hopefully every moment, every detail in the story has brought you emotions, thoughts, and maybe a little joy or motivation. Thank you for spending time with us, and hope that the next stories will continue to accompany you and touch your heart.